We're trying to capture a moment in time, a memory. I think it's the most beautiful thing when someone takes a bite of something and you can see them transported to like a memory in the past. Usually when, times were simpler, like you said, it was like easier just to experience things as they were. They weren't bombarded with so many responsibilities. All of those feelings with like being in that happy place. When we try to come up with flavors, our guiding light is like trying to do so in a way where we're at this magic little intersection of capturing the fondness of nostalgia, but in a way our adult palates can really appreciate.
Well, I love the San Gabriel Valley.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast.
So I grew up here and I still live in Alhambra.
I was raised in between Temple City and Alhambra.
Eventually resided in South San Gabriel.
Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley.
Monterey Park has pretty much been my whole life.
Well, I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley.
We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you are from, in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome. All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, we bring you the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We very much appreciate it. When I first met you guys in person, I was standing in line, right? And I was like, oh, I think those are the owners. And then you were looking at me and I was like, I think that person recognizes me, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. Like we saw each other, like I know him, but I can't pin why. So that's why we kind of like lingered.
But I was like, okay, so there's this huge line outside, and these people are not in the line, but they're here clearly, right? So I was like, that has to be the owners of the place. So I'm really glad that we connected, and now we're here. I maybe like a little over a month.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I'm very thankful, and I'm really excited to get into this because your guys is a beloved spot in the San Gabriel Valley, and I can't wait to get into your story. But before that, thank you to Paris Baguette for sponsoring the delicious treats and pastries here every week for our guests. Go check them out in the city of San Gabriel and say hi to Jason for us. They opened their doors in the middle of a global shutdown, not because it was easy, but because they believed the San Gabriel Valley deserved a space that celebrated culture through flavor. Their creations are rooted in memory, hojicha and burnt honey, recalling family dinners, coconut pandan, evoking childhood snacks, and yakult-inspired swirls, bringing comfort in every bite. What started as a response to hardship turned into a mission to honor the diverse heritage of a neighborhood through soft serve. Their shop doesn't just serve dessert, it offers belonging. They preserved the legacy of those who came before them and redefined what hospitality can look like for the next generation. They're partners in business and in life, and together they built a place where care, storytelling, and culture craft converge. Today's guests are the founders of one of the most talked about food spots in the SGV. Please welcome Amber Tan and Waldo Yan, owners of 626 Hospitality Group. Amber, Waldo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a beautiful intro.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And my start or intro to your guys actually happened in 2020 on the show where a guest brought your ice cream. So way back in 2020, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And instantly I was like, this is something very, very different. But thank you guys for being here. Let's start with what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, I actually grew up in San Gabriel. I went to Jefferson Middle School, Gabrielino, and I actually still live here in San Gabriel. So I think for me, home really is the San Gabriel Valley. And I think whenever I have friends from out of town, coming in, it's always really fun to showcase all of these different places and cultures that are a little hard to find outside of here. I think I did take it for granted a little bit. When I went to college at UC San Diego, I didn't realize that our hometown is so, I think, in terms of food, it's very intense in a good way. There's just so many options. And I think I got really homesick really fast when it came to food, because food is kind of like where you feel like comfortable and like where you find belonging. And then so after college, it was a no-brainer to move back home because I really missed a lot of the stuff that, you know, I kind of grew up on. And it was always really fun to see things like up and coming that, you know, represent a lot of like what we had growing up, whether it's like savory food, desserts, drinks. So yeah, so that's at least my personal connection. Like I've lived here forever and I still live here and I plan on living here for probably the rest of my life. So
Okay, awesome. And Waldo?
It's very, very similar, except I wasn't born in the San Gabriel Valley. My family actually came from China, and I came here when I was maybe 3 years old. But it's the first place we, you know, planted roots, rented an apartment, grew up here just like Amber my whole life.
In San Gabriel?
In San Gabriel, yeah. Our first apartment was off of Broadway. And, you know, by some weird twist of fate, we still live on that street as well. So, yeah, grew up going to all the same schools. Very, very lucky to grow up with all the same people that make up this neighborhood. And, you know, if everything goes right, I hope to stick around and be here pretty much most of my life.
And what was it like growing up in the SGV for you?
It was interesting, right? Because, like, I think we can only recall our own personal lived experience, but in conversation, we hear what life growing up was like for other people. So, I mean, growing up as an immigrant child here in San Gabriel, you know, fortunately, didn't really feel out of place. I didn't speak the best English. You know, I had like a funny accent growing up. I was an ESL student, but it was always easy to feel connected to, you know, what my home life and home heritage was because of the composition of the neighborhood. Like all of our stores gave us ready access to, you know, same cultural foods that, you know, we brought from China. It was never like odd or out of place to like eat the foods that we would eat at home when we're like out in public school. And this is like, you know, really contrary to the experience now as an adult when I speak to some other people, when they were, you know, very clearly a minority in their neighborhood. So it was nice to say the least, right? Like never really felt out of place. And there was always like something to learn about someone else's home and someone else's culture as well.
And what kind of child were you?
I mean, I don't want to revise history, but like, I'd like to say that I was reasonably well behaved, you know, like I get in trouble once and learn my lesson, try not to repeat the same mistake. Right. But I'm sure I was a headache to deal with. I'm sure my parents had a handful. I always had a healthy appetite, you know. I was really easy to feed, happy to eat anything, any time of day.
I was going to say we were both really big eaters. So
yeah,
our family was very happy to feed us.
And Amber, do you have a favorite memory from childhood growing up here?
So I actually went to elementary school outside of San Gabriel Valley, but I think that actually started like my interest in like other people's food. So what I mean by that is that I used to go to Zion Lutheran in Glendale, and what was really cool is that my classmates there during lunch, we would actually do like a kind of smorgasbord of food where we would just like lay out what mom and dad made us and then just do a big tradesies. So I remember describing to Waldo like what kind of food I was eating as a young child, and he was like, that is very diverse. Because for example, I had a couple of like Korean friends that showed me like what kimbap was. I embarrassingly did argue with them like, that's sushi, isn't it? Like, no, it's not sushi. And so that's again like one of the first things I was like, okay, that's not sushi. So but then my other friend did bring actual sushi, and then I had a friend that would bring like, you know, like Middle Eastern Mediterranean food, and then, you know, like I had another Filipino friend that would bring Filipino food. So that was like the first time like eating just so much different food that I didn't even realize were different. I mean, I know like that sounds silly. I did remember seeing different types of rices, and I thought like, oh, that one's such a long yellow piece of rice, but mine is so like short, and they taste and feel so different. And so why I bring that up is because like as I grew up, I was always like excited to try new food. And that's the great thing about San Gabriel Valley, is that there's literally so much to try. And I think it's fun because I think whenever you try someone's food, it's like their version of what authentic means. Because I think authentic's it's a very difficult, I think, concept, because I guess if you're going strictly by culture, I guess there is technically a singular version, but everyone has their own rendition of like how they grew up. Maybe their babysitter, their grandma, their uncle. Like there's like a little bit of differences in every quote unquote authentic version. So I think for me, whenever I like would eat out, it was always fun to see like what that version of like this dish kind of like tasted like. So yeah.
So you had a very wide range of exposure to food and thus culture at a very young age. And what is your ethnic background?
So my dad is full Chinese, and then my mom is Filipino Hispanic, but they both grew up in the Philippines. So it was actually a little confusing because I think my dad, I think culturally is more Filipino, but ethnically he's Chinese. So like when I grew up, I thought that Chinese and Filipino food were like the same thing, because they would always bring home like either like I guess Cantonese like barbecue or like Filipino like style food. So I just thought that was the same thing. And as I grew up, I realized that they're totally different. But yeah, so that like it was like a fun, confusing thing. Not like I didn't ever feel like out of place. Like, oh, my identity is ruined because this is not actually like what I am. But I just thought, oh, that's interesting. So that's Chinese food, that's Filipino food, and then this is American food, because I kind of had like a hybrid experience like growing up.
Interesting. The Filipino Chinese and then going to a Lutheran church is fascinating to me too. I went to a Lutheran church, which like they refer to it as Catholic Light, right? But I've never heard of that, and it sounds like that church was quite diverse.
It was really diverse, and actually I still am in touch with a lot of my elementary school friends. Like we were really close, so I think unfortunately, like life gets like a little bit in the way, but we used to have a cute little like elementary reunion like every like 2 to 3 years. I think the last one we had was actually to celebrate one of our friends' child's first birthdays, and that was like last year or 2 years ago. But yeah, so we actually are still in touch, which is really great.
And how do you identify now and then? Do you identify as Filipino Chinese, mixed, American? Like,
I can't lie, I'm pretty Americanized, but I will say that I think working in the food industry with Waldo, he's definitely taught me a lot more about Chinese food specifically. But I think because his mom and dad cook like very well, and I think my parents also cooked, specifically my mom, but I think she cooked more like Filipino American food. So I think I grew up very mixed. So it was just kind of like elementary school, just whatever was like at dinner table. So I never really fully felt I was ever full Chinese, full Filipino, like full American. I think it was like a very good mix of everything.
I see. And Waldo, earlier you said you didn't experience like any being an outsider. Like you just felt like you belonged here growing up in the SGV. What experiences led you to, or when you look back, what experiences sort of helped shape your path towards food and hospitality?
I think the biggest influence to that is definitely the dinner table at home. So I grew up as a restaurant kid. My parents, when they came to the country, when you don't speak the language, it's hard to apply any amount of intellect or skills that you have because there's a language barrier. So they worked really, really hard to open a restaurant, because at least, that way they could put food on the table for us, right? But, I don't think it surprises anyone at this stage that restaurant work is very time-consuming work. So even though they would work 6.5 days out of the week, on my mom's half day off, she would always make sure to prepare family dinner, like totally cooked from scratch. We would all be expected to sit down and like eat dinner together as a family. And this was true no matter how busy or tired, they were. And, I think that over time, it became apparent to me that food was this very powerful vehicle for expressing how much we care about people. So yeah, I think the dinner table at home every Tuesday with family was really what kickstarted my hope to kind of do the same with food and show people that we care.
As the child of a restaurant family, were you required to like put in work and time in the restaurant? Like,
so absolute opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I was told to stay as far away from the restaurant as possible. And much to my parents' disappointment, I am now neck deep in restaurants. And that's because my parents were aware, right? Like that the work is hard and a lot of the times it's thankless. And it's not the most financially stable either. And all they really wanted was a career path for me that wasn't so taxing, right? So no, from a young age, they told me like, hey, like you can eat here, but like don't do anything. Like just don't even come here. Like stay away. Yeah. So no, I didn't really do a lot growing up to help out the restaurant.
Did you experience their struggle? Like, were you aware of it? Did you see them, either happy or thriving in their careers?
I don't want to give myself too much credit here, right? Like, I don't think I was that aware as a kid to be like, oh yeah, I was fully conscious of what the extent of which my parents were going through. But I do know that I never harbored any sort of resentment, that they could never attend like anything that was going on, I guess, in my own life. Like, all the other parents show up to graduations and whatnot, but like I was fully aware that my parents couldn't because they were working, and they were working so that I could go to school, right? So I don't think that I was fully aware, because I'm sure my parents went through very considerable hurdles to insulate me from the stress of the restaurant. Our restaurant wasn't huge. It was like a tiny little shoebox in a food court, attached to an aging supermarket, right? So it's not glamorous. It's not, it's not making tons of money, but they kept the ship sailing so that I could focus on my studies and so that I could build an easier life for myself in the future. And I felt like I was always aware of that, even at a young age, which is why I did try kind of hard in school, because I didn't want to waste my parents' effort.
Yeah, that's a very unique story from hearing so many, immigrant stories who work in restaurant, and it's always the very, very same story, right? Putting on all these hours and doing homework there, sleeping there.
Mm-hmm.
How was it growing up then? Did you have a caretaker, older siblings? Like who was that person or figure for you?
So I do have two older siblings. I had an older brother and I have an older sister. And they did a lot to help raise me, like shuttle me like to and from like school activities. Honestly, I think I was on my own quite often. But school also kept us really busy. Like my parents encouraged me to like be a part of after school programs, to like whether it's to get ahead in academics or to volunteer for meaningful causes. My parents always encouraged me to occupy my time. So weirdly, I guess school sort of took care of me. Well, like I grew up at school all the time.
What high school did you go to?
Gabrielino, like
right across the street.
Right across the street. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And you also went to Gabrielino, correct? And what was school life in high school like for you?
It was really fun. Honestly, like I tried hard in school. I was definitely not as good as this guy. We actually had the same classes, like some of the same classes since like middle school, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like English class and history class in middle school, and then we had the same English class, and then we both were on the swim team at Gab. But high school was really fun. I think that was a chance to kind of explore a little bit more of like what I liked. So it's weird because I've always liked, I think whenever people like English, you assume they like history, or if they like math, they like science. But I liked the opposites. My favorite were like English and math. And then I really enjoyed swimming. So high school was just full of just a lot of work, like Waldo said, but it was really fun. I think some of our best friends literally started from middle school and high school, and we actually still talk and hang out with a lot of those friends. And I think that's what's, again, really special about the SGV, that it kind of keeps and brings people and community together. And so I think my own work ethic and like attitude about like how I carry myself did come from the people that I grew up with at school. I think we were very fortunate that at least academically, it was a pretty good school in terms of like, you didn't want to be left behind because everyone was admittedly so smart. So you would try a little harder. And I think who you surround yourself really, I think, determines like how you'll be in the future. So I'm very grateful for the high school that we went to and the friends that we had in those classes, because I think they really helped encourage us, push us, and have like a good like attitude about like, even if you studied really hard and you still failed, it's okay, just got to keep trying for the next one. Or, you know, if you did really well, they'd be like, hey man, really good job, just, you know, keep that up, whether it's, you know, like in the sport of swimming or in academics. So I think overall, kind of like what Waldo had mentioned, we were surrounded by very supportive teachers and very supportive friends. So we grew up very fortunate that the school that we went to, I feel, was very, very fulfilling, and it really was a great place to be.
So if you guys can't tell, I'm always driving to see what are the factors, the things that drive the passion behind what you guys do today, right? And so I sort of learned a little bit about Waldo's appreciation for this coming together over food on Tuesday nights, right? This limited time, man, like 6.5 hours. 6.5 days a week, that's tough to be away from your parents, right? And so now what I'm getting is you recognizing how community really, really is important and helps you, okay? And so you go off to San Diego after high school, and what was that experience like aside from missing all the delicious food here?
It was really fun. I was admittedly fortunate enough to get a scholarship to UC San Diego for swimming. So my schedule was pretty jam-packed.
You're like a legit swimmer. Well, what events?
I did sprint, freestyle, and butterfly.
So 50 free and 50 fly.
And I think 50 free, 100 free, 100 fly, and then 200 free.
Oh, and then did you do them in like relays too?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
yeah, that was my favorite. Very stressful.
You're a speed swimmer. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No.
So you got a scholarship to UC San Diego.
Yeah. So what do you call this? What was the question again? I totally forgot.
What was it like going to San Diego aside from missing the food here?
Right. It was really fun. I think similar to high school, I think I wanted to go to a place that was admittedly far from home to kind of, I think understand what it was like to live, like, I think away from parents. Because I think my parents were very, you know, like supportive and like wanted the best for me. But I think I was afraid that if I didn't move away from home, that I would like accidentally become way too dependent on them. So I really wanted to experience life like outside of my like immediate place. And so when I went to school, that is pretty much exactly what happened. I did get a little bit of culture shock because I think admittedly that was the first time, specifically on the swim team, like where I was like a minority. I think I was at the time like one of 4 like Asians on the team at the time. And that was like pretty shocking actually, because you come from a place where it's all Asian, and then at least on the swim team, because that's where I did spend a lot of like my time. So a lot of our study groups were with the swim team. You know, try to coordinate classes together, like especially if it was the same major. So I think that was the first time I like experienced like food like outside of like, you know, like I think Asian culture, for example, and like kind of felt not necessarily out of place, but just different. Yeah, but it was fun. A little hectic, just because balancing school and swim was admittedly really difficult, and I on our off season was crazy enough to try to get a part-time job just because I was like, I kind of need more money because I did eat a lot. So I needed to finance that food. But I think I'm very grateful for that time there, because I think personally where I learned a lot of like my work ethic and like really understanding that to become excellent at something does require not just hard work, but a lot of sacrifice. And I mean, like, I know this sounds silly, but like as like a sprinter, like you're literally dedicating like at least a year, obviously a lot more up until that point, but let's just call it like you're dedicating like a year of your time to just shave off like half a second, 0.2 of a second. And when that happens, it's like the most glorious thing that like could have happened like in that moment. So I think in terms of like my own like, I think personal growth, I learned to be pretty tough, like, and understand that like a lot of the time things won't pan out even if you try your hardest, but it's about continuing and persevering and like doing it with an attitude of like humility, grace, and like respect for like what it is that you're trying to do. But yeah, so that's kind of how school was for me, like in a nutshell. It was just a lot of like learning how to hone my craft, specifically at the time was swimming, but it is great because I think it relates a lot of things that we're doing right now. So very grateful for that lesson.
Yeah, that's a lesson that like everybody should get, right? And some people don't for a long time or never, maybe, or they're looking for drastic success like instantly, right? Like that's very, very common. So awesome. And Waldo, where does your journey go after Gabrielino? Were you guys keeping in touch during that time?
We kept in touch in the summer. We attended different colleges, but every summer we actually ended up working at the local pool, Smith Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were lifeguards and swim instructors there.
Oh, wow.
So we had this funny cycle going on where now that we had graduated high school and gone on to different schools, we like wouldn't see each other for the majority of the year, but like 2 months out of the year, we'd be back at the local pool teaching kids how to swim. And that's really how we stayed connected. Those like yearly check-ins. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I'll get into the romantic side later on, but did you know what you wanted to do after high school?
After high school, I think I wanted to do my best to honor my parents' wishes, which is stay away from the restaurant, and find, a career that maybe made sense for me. At the time, I was hoping to work my way towards studying law, but I never ended up fully pursuing that. Finished undergrad in preparation for it, but decided not to take next steps.
What was the determining factor there?
So I took school pretty seriously. Like I knew it mattered a lot to my parents, and like doing well for my parents was top of my priorities as well, as a way of honoring like all the sacrifices they made to support my studies, right? But even though I would be studying for my exams, I would at the same time be reading cookbooks. And at a certain point I was like, oh, this is a bad sign. Like I'm doing okay on my tests, but like I'm not, I don't think this is where my heart is, right? Like I'm doing it because I know it's the right thing to do, but very clearly there was something else that I really, really wanted to do that arguably maybe was also a right thing to do. So I was stuck in that limbo. But yeah, I think that was the inner moment of realization when I was studying for exams, and on the left side were textbooks and on the right side were cookbooks that had nothing to do with what I was studying.
This is a dilemma that a lot of immigrant children face, and some come to that confrontation, if there even was a confrontation, sooner, later. Maybe they just avoid it altogether. Maybe, and they don't get that recognition until years later when their business is actually success, or some of them are like, go be happy. So have you had this conversation with your parents, or what has that been like?
Oh yeah, we have had this conversation many, many times. Without having to get like too deep into the like ugly details, both my parents were opposed to me entering the restaurant industry for good reason. Like I have nothing but trust that they just wanted life to be more secure and easier for me, which is a perfectly reasonable thing for any parent to want for their offspring, right? My mom fell really, really ill, and sadly, she lost her battle to cancer. But in one of our final moments together, she was already hemorrhaging like blood in her brain, so she wasn't completely lucid at this stage in her life. But there was like one moment of clarity that like I know she meant it from the heart. She told me that her dying wish was for me to never cook again.
Oh no.
Yeah. That put me in this weird position where, of course, I want to, listen to what my mom is asking of me. And I did for a long time. I stayed away from cooking. I decided to work in other industries for a bit. Even then, like, even with it being like my mom's final wish for me, like I just couldn't shake the feeling that this is something I needed to give my best shot at. So yeah, we've had that conversation many times, and sadly there are some loose ends that are a little unresolved.
I have this, I'll say a bad habit of seeing someone experiencing pain and wanting to change that. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes it's just better to sit with that person in it. I still feel like, I'll just say for me, right? Like if I heard that, like I would need to transform that phrase into like, I want you to be happy. As a parent myself, like that's ultimately what I want for my child.
Right.
I want my kids to be happy in whatever that they do. And of course, success is defined in many, many different ways. So, well, thank you for sharing that story with us. That's an important part of your journey and the journey to, what you guys have are going through and building for the 66. So clearly there is a burning passion in you, and that's a common thread of all the people that have sat in those chairs on their road to like real success is like pursuing that. Pursuing that is really the most important thing. So Amber, did you know when you came back here what you wanted to do? Did you go into you went into the corporate world, right?
I was a little undecided either to do like sports psychology, physical therapy, but I think like me personally, I needed a small break from like I think academia in general, just because having to balance like school and swim, I think it did burn me out a little bit. So I think it just so happened that after I had graduated college, Waldo and I actually were already seeing each other, and I think when his mom unfortunately did pass away, I really wanted to offer like any help that I could. And I think that was probably the first time I had fully gone into the restaurant industry. I had like one of the part-time jobs I had in college was like UCSD's version of like Chipotle. So I would like roll burritos and stuff like that. And that was actually really fun. Because that was the first time I got a chance to interact with people that I would call like quote unquote guests or customers, and being able to like pack the perfect burrito was like kind of awesome. They're like, oh yeah, can you like mix it around a little bit? Like, yeah, I got you. Like, oh, you want a little more rice? It's like gonna be a little extra. Are you okay with that? Okay, cool. So that was like the first taste, but it was like so infrequent. It was like, a part-time job that I did like a couple hours like every other day. But I think working at his family shop, that was probably the first time I was like, oh, like this is very different than like what you kind of see on TV or like what I had expected. Because admittedly, like when I worked my part-time job in college, I was just a server. I wasn't in charge of like scheduling, prep, opening the restaurant, closing the restaurant, like any of that stuff. So I think working at Tasty Food, his family shop, that was the first time that I had worked in that industry. And I think it was very scary, to be honest, because I just didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. But at the end of the day, like I really just wanted to offer some help, because I at the time was a little undecided with where I wanted to go with my life. And I thought, okay, well, while I decide, I might as well put myself to work in a place where I've never worked before, and doing so in a way that can at least help like people that I obviously care about. So that was how I entered the food industry.
The listeners, and for myself also, you just sort of glazed over your connecting as a couple. So how did that come about?
It wasn't till after we had graduated that I think, like we just had always known each other, and I think it was just nice to like have someone that would talk to me about like anything, like literally anything. I can ask like how his day was, and he would give me like this long paragraph, but I wouldn't mind. I'd be like, oh, there's so much to say. And I would want to like comment on like things that he said like during like his paragraph and stuff like that. And I think like since we've always known each other, I've known that he has like really good work ethic, a really good attitude. So it was just kind of like picking up where we kind of always were just as friends. But then it was like, oh, like I really appreciate how like this person conducts himself, and kind of into that.
So he made the cut after all the years.
I had a proven track record at that point. I could be relied on.
Oh my gosh.
Like he is who I've seen over the years. Okay.
He always gives me a hard time about this, but
how come?
Decade worth of observation.
Yeah, I know.
And then just like, all right, there's some potential here. Maybe.
Only a decade.
Yeah, just the trial period,
I get it.
Okay. So you were working together at your family's restaurant, Tasty Food. And when I hear that, I think of this place on Las Tunas on the corner. Is that the same restaurant?
No, not the same restaurant. We were located off of San Gabriel and Garvey. There at the time was a 99 Ranch, Ranch 99, whichever way.
I say 99 Ranch.
Okay, yeah.
I think I say that too.
Yeah. I hear both, and then I forget which way I say it. But there was a grocery store there with a food court attached to it, and we were one of the stalls inside of that food court.
I see. And what was it like working together?
The work was very, very demanding, but it was pretty nice. Like even though it was hard work, right? Like it was like here's my motto, right? Like if you're gonna be doing something hard, at least find people you enjoy doing it with. And, I was very, very lucky to be with Amber, to be with family. And don't get me wrong, like, sometimes we get at it and like we don't like see eye to eye, especially with the context of me being in the restaurant actively involved at that point. No one else I'd rather be with on that journey, right?
So your parents have specifically said to you, don't enter a restaurant, but then you were working in their restaurant.
Yeah, so that happened after my mom's passing.
Oh, so you went there like as to sort of help out.
Correct. At our restaurant, teeny tiny, it was run by 3 people, my mom, my dad, and our chef. When one of them was no longer with us, it put an enormous strain on the operations. Our chef did everything he could to pick up additional work to help. My dad did the same. I don't know. At the time, I didn't understand how either of them had the sort of resolve to go to work the next day, like after it happened. But they did, and they kept the shop open, like as if nothing had happened. But I knew that the work was increasingly unbearable for them, just due to sheer workload. So if I knew I wanted to get into hospitality and into the restaurant world, what better place to try than to help out at the family restaurant at that point, right?
Wow, that must have been a really challenging time.
Yeah, my dad's a pretty nice guy, but every day was him looking at me and saying like, so you have a degree and you're here chopping chicken. How does this make any sense?
He would say those words.
Yeah.
Wow, that's tough.
It's okay. He was right. His opinion's justified, right? It's not out of left field. Like, you go through your whole life to like attend school, do well, and then like you come back and do in his mind the kind of work that people do when they have no other choice.
Was he saying this as a judgment on you or like for himself, feeling like, I put you in this situation?
I think he was trying to help me wake up, like from what he thought was like a weird delusion. Like he was just like you don't have to do this. Like, why are you here? Why are you wasting your time? Is like ultimately what he was feeling. So like the words come across more mean than the spirit, right? The spirit still was rooted in him wanting a better life for me. And like, I know that. I never questioned it, which is why I always just silently took it, because like, I know he didn't mean to hurt. I know he didn't mean anything bad. He's just a good dad. He just wants, his kid's life to be okay.
My wife and I have a saying that intent never negates impact. Like the example, if I'm practicing swinging my bat and accidentally hit you in the eye.
Great example, actually.
Okay. And so, but you gained a lot of experience in restaurant industry and hospitality at this working here.
I gained a lot of humbling experience, right? Like, I think that time there really showed me both the best and the worst parts of hospitality. Like, it showed me absolutely how thankless and stressful it can be when the business is failing. But it also showed me the power of the relationships that can be forged over food and through food. It's crazy to say, a lot of our friends today are people that were our guests at the restaurant, right? And who would have thought that would come out of like a no-name Chinese American fast food operation, right? Like, it's not really the setting people would imagine that lifelong friendships are made in. But it happened, right? So I think it did a lot for my development, because it taught me to appreciate when, we are blessed with good fortune and things go right. And that if you really, really want this vision of, being in restaurants and making people happy through food, you got to front load that with a lot of sacrifice. Like, setting the stage for that to happen doesn't spontaneously occur. It's built on sacrifice.
I want to move into the part of the story where the thought of 626 hospitality originated. Was that between both of you, or how did that first come about in your minds?
So if I'm recalling correctly, Amber, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes things get a little hazy. It was middle of the pandemic. Family restaurant had closed due to the nature of the pandemic. We were servicing an elderly population, so they were at risk in an Asian community who was taking news of the pandemic very seriously and really making efforts to bunker down. And because it was an elderly, non-necessarily English-speaking population, the thought of using third-party delivery apps to float the restaurant at the time were like, it's not written in the stars. So we made the painful decision, but correct decision, to close, which left us with a lot of newfound free time, which left us wondering, what do we do now? At first it was, everyone needed time to adjust to what the world looked like during the height of the pandemic. But then there really was a point where we weren't sure like what next steps are, like now that the restaurant is closed, and it really spun out in, it like faded away, right? Like it wasn't like a happy closure necessarily. The moment where we had reignited a clear desire to give this like one more concerted effort was actually when a guest at the old restaurant had reached out on an internet forum like, hey, does anyone know what happened to this restaurant called Tasty Food? I ate chicken rice there once, and like it changed my life a little bit, and like I'm really wondering what happened to it. And someone caught wind of that and showed us, and Tim, who we still are friends with to this day. He's the reason why we decided that, didn't work out the first time, but let's give it another crack. Let's give it another best shot and see where this goes. So that was the moment for me, at least.
Yeah, I think when it was on like a Facebook group called SGV Eats, and I think a lot of our friends were just randomly, like not randomly, but suddenly tagging us like in the comments. I'm like, what is this? Like, because I didn't know about this forum personally, so then I just had like 4 different like friend groups, completely unrelated, like commenting on this, and I was like, what is this? And so I was like, Waldo, look. And I think we kind of took that as like, wow, like kind of like what Waldo said, like our tiny small restaurant like made such an impact that this person who only ate at a restaurant maximum twice is just wondering where we went. And I thought, okay, well, if food can make that much of an impact, why don't we just try one more time? Like, we'll try one more time, and if we can't get the ball rolling by like, I don't know, did we give ourselves like half a year, something like that? A year? I can't remember. But we gave ourselves like a set time frame of like if we can't get something going or figure out what we want to do specifically, we'll just call it quits. And we'll do a more like, I think, typical like corporate job. So I think during the pandemic, when we had a lot of free time, we were just dabbling in a lot of random things. And I think that spanned from like smoked barbecue, noodles, rice bowls, like I think like drinks, waffles. And then I think we just eventually landed on ice cream. Well, he landed on ice cream. He literally looked at me and was like, hey, you like ice cream, right? Yeah, I do. I love ice cream. Why? Awesome. I bought an Italian gelato machine that's coming tomorrow. And I'm like, how big is it? Like, oh, it's just a tabletop. How much was it? You don't have to worry about that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I think we, started spinning ice cream. Like during the time of the pandemic, he was reading a lot of the cookbooks that he never had a chance to read when we had like helped with the restaurant. So he was brushing up on a lot of books. And I think like, we both love ice cream. Why not make ice cream? And I think that's kind of where specifically ice cream came into play. Like I think end of 2020, like we were kind of like making it for ourselves, kind of gifting it to friends. And I actually think that's probably how you got the ice cream. He was we lived in the same area, and I think he was over at our place a lot to kind of like help taste test, hang out, and like that's I think how you got the ice cream when we were just testing out to like friends and family.
Yeah. Instantly I was like, oh, this is very unique. Very Asian, recognizably Asian. And I was like, this is really cool.
Thank you.
We were in a show here once, and Scott's like, yeah, like people only come to me when they're hurt and injured and upset. And he's like, but if I had an ice cream shop, everybody would come and be happy. I was like, oh, I never thought of that. But yeah, you don't go to an ice cream shop and you're like just pissed off.
Yeah. Well, that actually has a pretty funny reason, specifically why like we chose ice cream.
We like to joke that ice cream is one of the happiest foods around. And if our mission is to try to spread a little bit of joy through food, ice cream made total sense. And the reason we feel that is because when you're having a good day, what do you want to do to go celebrate? Go get some ice cream. When you're having a terrible day, what do you want to do to make yourself feel better? Go get some ice cream. Doesn't matter. Ice cream is always a solution, Ice cream equals happiness. And we really did land on it because we wanted to be that facilitator where we could make happier moments a little more cherished, and we can make challenging moments a little more tolerable.
Well, I want to get more into that story of your shop. Before that, though, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance. What did you guys bring with you today?
I brought this very beat up orange spatula. This was the spatula we used at the Hainan chicken shop. This literally, I think, mixed, I don't know how many batches of rice. But yeah, I think I brought this because this was like the first, to me personally, turning point of like, I think this is what I'm going to do, like do restaurant work in the food industry. So this holds a lot of significance because I literally held this guy for like, I think hours at a time, at least 5 years. And it helped, mix a lot of our rice together. For a really long time, it actually still smelled like chicken rice. But then, like obviously now we only use it for like, it's barely used now because when it got a little chip in it, that was actually my fault. I don't remember what happened, but I know I did that. But yeah, so I think now this just kind of lays on the side just because, I don't want to accidentally eat some spatula because it's a little worn out. But yeah, I think this for me symbolizes, the start of like my personal restaurant like industry journey, being the one to like mix the rice every day, help portion it with this. And yeah, I think I look at it with a lot of pride, although the restaurant Tasty Food did close. I think that was a huge starting point for us where we met. We solidified like how we really do enjoy working with each other. We met a lot of really amazing people, of which we are grateful to still call our friends, and we plan on having them be like, lifelong friends. And I think that is where I think a lot of this journey really started. So that's why I brought this guy.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm curious how you take it, looks like a bite out of it. I never seen a silicone spatula with that.
Do you remember how this happened? I have no idea.
This thing's been put through the ringer. It's done a lot of work at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And Waldo, what did you bring with you today?
I brought actually a gift that my college friends and I bought for my mom. It's her kitchen knife. We bought it for her because there was this one day a bunch of us went to go visit the restaurant, and they all ate there together. My mom cooked a bunch of things for everyone.
Could you hold it up a little higher?
Yeah, of course.
So that's like a 10-inch?
So this is a Japanese knife maker, and they do sizing that's a little bit different than Western sizing. The blade is like a little bit between 8 inches, like 8 point something. So it's not huge, but we bought this as a gift for her because she did all that cooking for us. Showed us a little bit of home cooking, but naturally she didn't want to accept any kind of payment for it at the restaurant. So my friends all put in a little bit of cash, and we imported. At the time, it was like a little harder to get these things, but we imported this knife for her from a very particular knife maker. And when we gave it to her, she immediately felt like it was too precious to use. So she never actually used it. But in our time at the restaurant, I want to say close to 100% of the chicken that was carved when we got involved for the chicken rice, which was a dish that we came up with to honor her cooking. I think the spirit of my mom's cooking is really distilled like this. There will be times where you don't have access to like the most luxurious or even the most ingredients, but it's the amount of effort you put into them that really makes the difference, right? So we wanted to do Hainan chicken because I think it's a dish that really relies on very, very basic staple ingredients. Chicken is probably the most commonly consumed protein in the world. Rice, staple grain, simple vegetables. Nothing about it screams opulence. Nothing about it screams like specialty foods. But the entire trajectory of that dish and how good it can be is defined by how much effort is poured into those very, very basic ingredients. So yeah, this was the knife that we used at the family restaurant to, carry on that legacy.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing that in. And do you keep that and use that at home now?
It is lovingly retired at home. It sees occasional use, but it definitely doesn't see the heavy duty day-to-day use that it did in the past. We keep it near her altar.
Thank you for bringing that in. I want to get into more of the ice cream shop, but before that, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sometimes even the best of us can slip up. That's why the law offices of Scott Wormuth are here to pick you back up again.
And while they strive to get you the biggest compensation possible, oh my gosh.
Their main concern is your health and recovery. They work closely with doctors and insurance companies to make sure you get the proper medical treatment.
Initial consultations are free, so give them a call.
At the law offices of Scott Wormuth, we're with you all the way.
I'm Scott Wormuth. We've been fighting for your rights for more than 40 years.
All right, we're back with Amber and Waldo. Before the break, you two were sharing your items of significance, and thank you for bringing those in. Before we go on with the show, though, we'd like to ask questions from this deck of cards when we come back from the break, and it's just a fun way for the audience to get to know us a little bit better. So I'll be answering as well. Here we go. What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives?
Working in the food industry.
Work in the food industry once. Okay, awesome.
Or food industry, or like I think hospitality industry, because I think I kind of, for example, like until I started working in the food industry, or aka the hospitality industry, I think I kind of took for granted like the work it takes to, you know, deal with, like, for example, customer service. So I guess specifically maybe customer service, like a customer service job, because I think there's a lot of behind the scenes that I think people don't really like see unless they're actually part of it. So I think it's actually really good for people to know, like, oh, what it's like to have to unfortunately deal with a guest who admittedly is maybe disruptive, or like maybe like they're having a bad day and are accidentally taking it out on someone else, and like how that does affect like how I think you feel like as like a human being sometimes. And I think if we can all like at least get a little glimpse of what it's like to be in the customer service industry in some capacity, I think there can be a lot of more shared respect and shared like understanding when things unintentionally or accidentally go wrong or not like how it was planned. I think that would actually be kind of nice. I think I know that sounds silly, and I don't want it to come from a biased place, but even before I worked in the restaurant industry, I think some of my friends that did always said the same thing, like, oh, I wish that people had a chance to like understand like what it takes to be able to do something like this. And yeah, I think probably something like that.
Yeah.
I think that everyone should give a second chance to a food they think they don't like.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, please go on.
Like, I you know, like all of us have tastes, and like, you know, it's totally cool to have your own opinion, right? But I think sometimes our opinions are a little frozen in time, where maybe we had like one bad experience, or like at the time our palate really had a preference or an aversion to a certain thing, and we never give it a second chance even later when a lot of time has gone by and there's been a lot of time for growth and change. So I always think that if there's something you really, really think you don't like, you should try it at least one more time. Give it another shot.
That's a really good one.
That's really good. Before I answer mine, just to piggyback on what you said, I used to go and eat sushi at, I think it was called Hirozen in West LA somewhere, pretty frequently. The chef knows me. I know the chef. So one day I go in there and I'm like, oh, I'll do omakase. And he's like, great. What don't you like? I'm perfect. I'm going to tell you all the things I don't like, and we're going to avoid all those, right? I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. He's like, great. I'm going to make all those for you. And I was like, this is some kind of joke, right? And he's like, no, I'm going to make all those for you. And I was upset at first, right? I was like, why would you do that? And he's like, if you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. And I was like, okay. That was the best thing in my like sushi loving experience that could have ever happened to me. He made like everything that I said I didn't like, and I love it now. Now I love it all, right? But I was like, man, I'm so grateful for that one experience. Well, my thing is, I think everybody as an adult should spend, let's say, an hour in nature, just experiencing the sounds, the feelings, and their thoughts. I think that's so difficult for so many people, you know, that so much is like going on, and here we never get that. We never get that. Just to be in nature and to be with our thoughts, that has a really like grounding effect, literally and figuratively. So, well, if you're watching or listening, what is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives? Let us know in the comments. That's an awesome answer.
Way better than mine. Good thing I went first.
Okay, so back to the shop. I think you've already answered why the pivot. This is a question for me. Your flavors are deeply personal, like burnt honey and barley, inspired by Korean barbecue tea or coconut pandan, a nod to Vietnamese sweets. How do you decide which memories to turn into ice cream?
That's a question for the R&D guy, for sure.
The best way we can describe it is nowadays you can get your hands on like any ingredient if you look hard enough. And it almost exists a body of written literature for like every style of cooking from like every heritage if you look hard enough and like translate hard enough. I think where we really try to decide like, oh, let's try to capture this as a flavor is we're trying to capture a moment in time, like a memory. I think it's the most beautiful thing when someone takes a bite of something and you can see them transported to like a memory in the past. Usually when times were simpler, like you said, it was like easier just to experience things as they were. They weren't bombarded with so many responsibilities, and like it digs up like all of those feelings with like being in that happy place. So when we try to come up with flavors, our guiding light is like trying to do so in a way where we're at this magic little intersection of capturing the fondness of nostalgia, but in a way our adult palates can really appreciate. So yeah, like we're trying to capture that little moment in time.
Well, you absolutely did that with one of the toppings. I don't know what it's called, but it's like a little wafer, like this like Chinese candy thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I had not had that since I was a kid.
Exactly.
And I was like, what is that? Because I didn't recognize it by the name, right?
Yep.
And then they're describing it to me, and when I ate it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I must have been 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unwrapping paper.
Yeah, because I think when I was younger, I thought Haw Flakes were like delicious pennies that were just ginormous.
Yeah.
And like, and like you said, like we hadn't seen that topping or like not that topping, that thing in such a long time. So like when we were trying to figure out like what to put on our toppings bar, it was like, okay, again, how can we meet like nostalgia and like fun and like bring it to like, an adult palate, a young kid's palate. And so I think same thing, a lot of people were like, whoa, I haven't seen that in like 2 decades. So it was really fun for people to interact with the toppings bar. And, I think it was one of those things like, okay, like if you have like a fruity flavor, like what's a fruity thing that like would be fun to add? So we thought, oh, Haw Flakes. So we were, I think Waldo and I were just walking around, I think at like 99 Ranch and just like, oh, what are we looking for? Like, and I mean, I think we were admittedly a little aimless, and I think we both saw that like, oh, that's a great one.
we both had that moment of like, wow, I hadn't eaten that in like decades. And then we're like, wait, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And just like you said, everyone that sees that is like, oh my gosh, I hadn't had that since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I had all these memories of like playing with it, like biting it in a certain way, biting through like several of them.
Yeah.
You could eat, like,
yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah, like so many memories. Awesome. You said that 626 ice cream is about more than food. It's about creating a space where people feel seen and cared for. What does that look like behind the scenes, especially when it comes to leading your team?
I think for us, we truly try our hardest to lead by example. I think that as leaders, it's not so much that we have authority over people. It's that we have a responsibility to the people around us, right? So if we want our space to be a space where people feel welcome, feel like they're seen and that they belong, like immediately upon entry, like we need to be the ones to like set up that culture first for our team, and then so that we can extend it to our guests, whether that's like active hands-on training, getting people a little bit more polished in terms of how to deliver service and hospitality, or just establishing proper culture in our own workplace and how we treat each other. We think all of those decisions ultimately culminate to that like feeling of a space being safe, welcoming, and where people belong, right? So just as much as we can, we try to model behavior that we think is conducive of a space like that and those governing values.
Well, to give you some real feedback on my experience there.
Okay. Give it to me honestly.
So that was my first time, right? And I've heard about it, and I've seen you guys on social media, and so I stood in the line, and this is what I'm aware of. There's a long line. This is a business. How am I going to get treated when I get up there and have all these questions, right? And my fear and concern is like, are they going to try to rush me through? Are they going to be annoyed at my questions? And 100% they were like, let me show you all these things. Let me, answer any questions you have. And I was like, oh, okay, now I feel better, right? Because like I feel pressure because there's a long line here, but they made me feel like it was okay, and they were like really wanted me to understand everything that was going on, and didn't rush me at all. Like that was like, I really felt all of that. Beyond everything else, I felt all of that with a monster line behind me,
So if I can interject to give a little bit of more specific insight as to that experience, right? We have this saying on the team that like we're here all night working service. Our guests are here sometimes, on occasion, usually Fridays and Saturdays, the line gets a little bit more hectic. Rest of the week's usually way more peaceful for anyone not looking to line up. But on those occasions where the line gets a little bit long, we like reminding each other that like we're here all night. We might do this 100 times a night when we walk a guest through the experience. But to that guest, they waited whatever amount of time they did to have their time with us. And we need to be here fully present for them and treat them as if this is the entirety of their experience, because it is. It doesn't matter like how many times I have to say like, welcome in. Is it your first time with us? Like we have to mean it every single time, because for that guest, we're 100% of their experience. So there's like, we try to remind ourselves there's no such thing as missing the mark here. We have to be consistent because it's what our guests deserve. Like just the fact that you're willing to line up, like why would we not give our best to someone willing to not just like support our business, but spend time waiting in line to support our business? So we try to be very, very conscious of what our guests are doing and electing to do by supporting us. So we're glad it came through.
Yeah. And, I can't say that I remember the flavors like in my mind and on my palate, but I remember how I felt coming to there after the line. And I was like, oh, okay, this feels really good. Everybody has like a really positive energy. No one feels like I'm like rushed or upset that I'm here, So yeah, all very positive.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. You've mentioned wanting to shift the culture of the hospitality industry to be more sustainable and equitable for workers. What practices have you implemented to support that vision, and what still needs to change in the broader industry at large?
Very, very nuanced and layered question. Mm-hmm. I wish I had an all-encompassing answer, because if I did, I feel like, we'd be on the track to doing something pretty great. All I can suggest are what our current experiences are and like what our hopes are. So I think the challenges presented for like this industry being equitable is at the end of the day, it's like tremendously hard work if you really care about doing a good job. But at the end of the day, it's not really financially sustainable. Like, I don't know if it's maybe because I just lack business acumen, but I don't think that the amount of effort is required to operate a business in this industry well, and to take care of employees well, and our teammates well, is like proportionate with like the financial realities and the constraints of like what revenue really looks like. And I don't want this to come across as a complaint of any kind, right? Like we are so tremendously grateful for the support that we do have from the community locally and people who are driving like great distances to come hang out and give us a try. But at the end of the day, I wish I had like a magic pill solution that like could connect our desired values of, everyone being taken care of, from our guests to our team, to ourselves, with the reality of like that actually making dollars and cents. So I don't know exactly how we can get there. I do know what has worked well so far, and that, like I had alluded to earlier, comes down to what amount of effort are we really willing to put into this, and what amount of sacrifice are we really willing to put into this. I think wanting things and having ideals and values to like verbally fall behind is really easy. It's just words, right? But it's our actions that really define how much those values mean to us, and how much comfort we're willing to give up to drag those values and ideals into reality. That's what we try to remind ourselves of. Doesn't happen easy. It all comes at a cost. And if we're trying to make this happen, we should shoulder the burden of as much of that cost as possible to make a better future for our team.
I'm smiling on the inside because these are deep thoughts and conversations, and someone who's just like, oh, we're going to talk about ice cream here, and it's so much more meaningful than that. And I appreciate you sharing those thoughts with us. What's one flavor you created that completely surprised you and how much it resonated with customers?
I feel like you're very vocal about this.
Oh, deep in thought.
I think probably lychee-strawberry. Yeah, because I think I personally, I love rich, creamy things. So I have always, loved like more milky, dairy-full like of flavors. Waldo's the opposite. He loves like fruit flavors, light, sour. I joke that I don't want any nutritional value in my dessert. I don't want to see fiber. I don't want to see fruit in it. So I think I will say that I think currently the two flavors that are surprising that people like. I mean, I love the flavors, but people have really like, I think, grown very like fond of these two flavors is lychee-strawberry and ube vanilla. Yeah, because I think for a long time, I think lychee-strawberry has been our most popular like sorbet, and I think sometimes even like most popular flavor like in general.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think like I'm surprised, not because I think it's a bad flavor, because I think it's a really great flavor, but I guess like the idea of like lychee and strawberry being together, which is actually a really cool story. So when we first started doing ice cream, why that flavor even existed is because we were catering a birthday party for a set of twins. And these young twins, I don't remember how old they were. They're like
sub 5.
One twin wanted lychee, one twin wanted strawberry, and they would not give up the flavors. And so, the mom reached out like, I know you don't really have these flavors on your list right now, but is there anything you can do with that? And so I think Waldo and I thought about like, why don't we try just combining them together? And so that's actually how that flavor came to be. It was like for a twins' birthday party. Unfortunately, they really loved it. And so I think that was one of the first flavors that we knew we wanted to bring to the shop when we first opened. And then I think ube vanilla. The first rendition of vanilla flavor we brought was black sugar vanilla. We used Tahitian Gold. We love those guys over there. But I personally really like that flavor. And I was curious how people would respond to like an ube vanilla flavor. But I think me personally, I grew up with ube, so I love purple. So I think we knew it would do well, but I think we were surprised at like how much people love ube in general. And so I think those to me are the two flavors that are fairly surprising in terms of like popularity.
Do people typically come as a new customer because of the unique flavors or because of the draw of like the feeling there? Because there's such like a hangout type vibe there that is very unique.
I'm not sure, but
I think
mixture.
I think you hit the nail on the head with it being a mixture. At the end of the day, I think a experience has a lot of ineffable qualities to it, a lot of different aspects to it, but all of it culminates to like that feeling that you said you left with, right? So, the space having a certain energy to it, how you're treated when you walk in to join us, hopefully food quality, we're still a food establishment, so hopefully food quality is there too. I think all of it matters. And everyone comes for a slightly different reason of intrigue. But I think even if in your priorities, you're like one of those people that like really cares about ambiance, or if you're one of those people that really cares about the food, you always leave appreciating that someone was thoughtful about other aspects that maybe you don't prioritize directly, and you still derive value from that. So we try to say that, you know, there's no decision that happens in this space without intention, and we should always approach like everything in this space with that sort of respect.
You just summarized what I picked up on, but I couldn't put it into words. Like everything there seemed to have intentionality behind it. Probably even the lighting, the way that's lit, right? And when I go into a space and I see things like that are just there just because, I'm like, that doesn't feel right. Like, so, like, what is the purpose of that being there other than just to fill that space, right? So, thank you for putting the words to my thoughts, Waldo. So, last question here. Looking ahead, what's next for 626 Hospitality Group? Are there new projects, collaborations, or flavors you're especially excited about?
We thankfully have an exciting next couple of months. As the weather warms up, obviously more and more people have frozen dessert like top of the mind. We will be working with a lot of really exciting partnerships that we have yet to announce, but that will be communicated on our social media. And most importantly, in those partnerships, what we're really excited about is the ability for two groups that have shared values to really come together and hopefully create something that's a little bit bigger than any of us could have achieved independently. So we're always looking to work with other people in and related to this industry that are, trying to make the world a slightly happier place.
This is all very exciting and mysterious at the same time.
Yeah.
So we got to stay tuned into your social media to find out. Okay.
We don't want to make announcements too soon and then let the cat out the bag. But there have been plans in the works, and we're really excited to announce them soon.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move on to the final segment of the show where we get to learn a little bit more about where you guys like to eat in the San Gabriel Valley. All right, this is what we call the SGV3, and we get to learn your 3 favorite places to eat in the SGV. So who wants to go first?
It was really tough. I had to list out a lot of places, and I will say there's a lot more than just 3, but I think the first one that came to mind was actually Saucy Chick Eatery by Rhea and Marcel. We actually had first met them at Smorgasburg, LA. And I think the thing that really honed it in for me was actually this dish that they have called chachos. It's like an Indian style, like I guess nacho set. And I think just the flavors there were so good and just so different. Because again, it's Indian Mexican food. I think cultures that don't normally get to, mesh together. And it was just done in a way that was refreshing. Yeah. So I think that place is in Pasadena. Really love that place. And I think Rhea and Marcel are both really great people who, again, have very similar values to us, where they're trying to showcase their culture. And there's a lot of culture to share. They care about their team. They care about the people. So I personally really love what they stand for. So it's a really easy thing to want to eat and bring people to. The second one is Meat and Essentials in San Marino. Eagle and Mel are really great people. And actually, Eagle used to eat our Hainan chicken rice back in the day.
Are you saying ego or eagle?
Eagle.
Eagle, okay.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, my pronunciation is kind of bad sometimes. But yeah, Eagle used to eat our Hainan chicken at the shop, at Tasty Food. So it was really cool, I guess almost a decade later, he had heard that we had opened the shop. We found out he was opening a shop, a butcher shop. And so it was really amazing to be able to see these two parties, we not lost touch, but we just hadn't seen each other in a really long time. So when we both had our own spaces, it was nice to be able to go. And so at Meat Essentials, you have delicious Australian style coffee. You have really great, I think, ethically sourced meats, and they butcher everything themselves, which I think is really respectable. And he knows a lot about meat. I know Waldo and Eagle used to nerd out about meats, I think, when we were dabbling in like barbecue back in the day. But that place is really great. And I think same thing, they are very kind people. And during a time where we admittedly were going through a lot of hardship, they offered a lot of like help, and like more than just words. They like would feed us, like when we did like our ice cream deliveries to the shop, they would give us soup because they had a feeling we probably weren't eating very well because of like a lot of grief that was happening. So no, you know, they're just really good people, and I really want more people to know about their butcher shop. It's a really cute shop, and the people behind there really care. So that's another one. And then I think last but not least is Osawa in Pasadena. Kind of like what you had mentioned, like their like, you know, food, sometimes you don't really remember exactly the food. Well, first of all, their food is really good. But I think what really touched me was like how we were treated, like as guests there. And they like, you know, the line was long, you know, the lines are very long there. I heard it's like really hard to get a reservation sometimes, but when we had mentioned that we were celebrating, they, you know, did everything they could to make sure that like us and our party were taken care of. And I think like that to me, you know, makes, I think, an experience feel really like fulfilling and special. Everyone from like literally like the cook to the servers to even the dishwashers, every time I come in, they all say hi, which is really nice because it gets very busy, but they take that like just 2 to 3 seconds to make sure that they know that, hey, we're grateful that you're here. We're happy to see you. And I just feel so happy going into their shop every time. So again, there's more than 3, but if I had to nail down to just 3 for right now, it would be those 3 for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Some people sneak in an SGV 4 or 5, and one person did categories. They're like, oh, in this category I have 3.
Wow.
Well, they had like 9
spreadsheet.
It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard. I was like sitting there like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna just pick 3? But
yes, much harder than it seems.
It is, yeah. But you
we're
know,
blessed.
Yeah,
to be in
SGV
this
just has
neighborhood.
so many places, but those are the 3.
I've actually been to, I saw Saucy Chick on social media first, Smorgasbord, right? And then we got connected somehow, and that just sort of dropped off. But I did go to their location on Rosemead. And I'll have to say, like, the person who was helping me and then the person putting the food together, both really, really friendly, helpful, like, you know, wanted to guide me through my first experience there. So that's what I remember. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Meat and Essentials, we also connected on social media briefly, but I went into his shop. Mm-hmm. Very unique items there. Mm-hmm. Very, very unique items. Yeah. And of course, Osawa, like I've been there. Yeah. it is really, really good, but very, very tough to get a table. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Waldo, you're SGV 3.
Oof. All right. The painful task of narrowing it down to just 3.
Yeah.
There's just so many places.
Yeah. When so many more deserve the limelight. Let's see. One that comes to mind right away. Nature Pagoda on Valley. I think that place is like an institution that represents what it means to be a restaurant in like San Gabriel Valley, right? It's like deeply, deeply connected to the heritage of cooking, utilizing nutritious ingredients and like a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine as well. And I think it's so important that as a community, even as time passes, we still have restaurants that like honor our roots and connect us to parts of our food heritage that maybe are a little bit less marketable in like mainstream America. The food is absolutely delicious, number one. So like anyone should be happy eating there. But I think that they're doing some really, really heavy lifting and have been for a long time, like representing what it means to be a restaurant in San Gabriel Valley. You know, it comes from the home, and if it comes from the home, it comes. Another restaurant in the Japanese category that I think totally deserves a shout out on Rosemead Boulevard, Hayatobi, I think is this phenomenal restaurant. Of course, food is delicious, right? Like that has to be like bare minimum standards that we're looking for. You have to have like great food, right? But I think so much more than that in our repeated experiences there. It's getting to know the chef and owner who puts so much care into providing for his guests. Like anytime I get to speak with him, it's always like he asks how we are, and the conversation gravitates towards like his ideas for how he can make sure that his restaurant is better servicing the needs of the local community. Like he's noticing that there are a lot of families with younger children, so he wants to make sure that the menu is friendly for family units. Whereas, you know, traditionally sushi bars weren't necessarily like built for family units, you know, and I just think it's so incredibly respectable that someone who has so much experience, so much direct connection to the food that is being prepared is willing to not be stuck on achieving something personal, but to focus instead on like how he can apply his skills and his experience to better serve others. And at the end of the day, I think that's what it really means to be a restaurant, right? Like it's like all things trace back to the consideration of what can we do to better care for our guests. And I think Hayatobi and the chef and the team there really, really represent that well. Delicious food also.
That is the really unusual standalone building. It's
yes.
kind of small, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. You're thinking of the exact same building, standalone, like flanked with a little bit of parking on both sides. But since they built that middle divider, it's a little bit like more difficult to access on both sides of the street. But yeah, fantastic restaurant. If you haven't gone, I know you mentioned you love sushi.
I do, and you know, Nadine from Drifting Pretty. She was one of the like originators of drifting in the San Gabriel Valley. She mentioned that like that was her friend, so she went in there and she's like, "Oh, I know you."
Also, colorful history, man of many talents.
Yeah,
he can drive cars.
Okay,
he can drive.
Okay, so that's their connection then. Okay, so when she said that, I was like, okay, now I have to go check it out. I still haven't gone, but what I say when people, because I really love sushi, is to go to one place and develop a relationship with the chef, because the fish changes all the time, right? And there's no recipe other than like the rice or whatever, and the whoever is buying the fish from the fishmonger matters, right?
Yep.
In terms of the quality. So then if I'm going there, I'm really going there for the interaction.
Yep.
So, okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
A third place.
A place that really, really does come to mind is the newly opened Woon location in Pasadena. I think that restaurant does so much that we hope to achieve, like as we grow and develop as a company. You know, it's like home style Chinese cooking. But it's servicing a neighborhood that really lacks those options, which number one, like I think it's like incredibly admirable that the owner, Keegan, would choose to specifically plant roots in a neighborhood and share food that has a very personal connection to him, with people who didn't grow up with a shared experience. I mean, naturally there's going to be hurdles to that, right? There's more teaching, more people who are confused or hesitant to try the food. But he dove headlong into building very organic and genuine relationships with a neighborhood, sharing food that means a lot to him growing up. Great food. And you can tell when you walk in that the team that works there to take care of the guests, you can tell that they're taken care of. Like just little things, right? Like they can be working on something, not looking at anyone, and they'll be smiling, right? And I think so many times as consumers, like we have our set of priorities. Like we want to eat something good. We might be looking for a good value. And then there are considerations that I think are like much, much harder to quantify. And that's like whether or not an establishment has like good values backing it and takes care of the people that comprise the establishment, right? And so in many, many ways, like from a distance, I really admire what Keegan is doing at Woon to build a restaurant that comes from a genuine place in the heart and that continues to support a large cast of people who are all working very, very hard to take care of the ins and outs of the entire space. So Woon, Pasadena, absolutely strong vote for me for like third pick there. No particular order, but if I have to just choose three, right?
Awesome. Well, there's nothing that you don't do that's thoughtful behind it, huh? I see that because I'm the same way. People know that about me. Like if I have this little thing, they're like, what's the story behind this thing here? You know. So I'm like that as well. So, well, thank you both for being here today and sharing your story with us. I'm so glad that we had this conversation.
Us too.
And I'm glad that we can share this with our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us too. It was fun.
If people want to get in touch with you, come check out your shop. What's the best way to do that?
Well, we would love a chance to meet anyone who's interested in coming by in person at the shop. It's just in Arcadia on like 160 East Duarte Road. We're just right at the corner next to a good old Subway. Wonderful neighbors. We love our neighbors at Subway. They can come by, visit the shop. If anyone has any questions because they live like a little bit further, easiest way to get in touch with us is directly is probably through Instagram. At 626 Hospitality Group. We try our best to stay on top of any inquiries that come in so that, in this day and age, sometimes you got to like really carve out time in your schedule to make a trip out somewhere, right? So if someone has questions, we want to do our best to answer them in advance for them.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here today. I really appreciate it. Well, there you go. Another episode in the books for you. I hope you enjoyed discovering the story behind this beloved place in the 626. That's what we hope to bring to you. What I really got from this conversation were two people who were really intentional about what they wanted to do. And that's so different from a lot of people, I think, these days. Like their starting point is what's going to earn me the most money, right? Or something like that. How can I be successful in these ways? And in their story, I hear this like, how can I continue to bring this feeling to people? How can I give to people rather than what can I take? And I think that's really powerful in this story. That's what I got from this. Maybe you got something different, but either way, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. If you want to check out the full catalog of episodes, look at our website, www.mysgv.net. Don't forget to like and share. And until next week, we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Scott Wormuth, directed by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers, and original music by Yone OG. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice mother. No, kind of mother.